So my name is Sean, as I mentioned. Our session today is providing meaningful feedback with Screencastify. So we have three primary focus areas, and then we'll also try to make sure that we have time at the conclusion for questions. But we really want to help kind of show and highlight practical ways that we can use Screencastify for video-based feedback. As a kind of extension to that, we'll make sure that we are providing actionable feedback to our students with multiple ways of how shareable options within Screencastify can make that really easy and simple to do. And then lastly, we're going to talk about making feedback a learning experience. All of you have so much to deal with on a daily basis that ideally we are implementing this and embedding it into the day-to-day work that you're doing throughout the week. So before we do that, I want to give you a quick intro for me. As Kathleen mentioned, so I am Sean. I've been working with JCPS now for a while. Prior to coming to Screencastify, I was a high school teacher, department chair, and assistant principal for quite a while. And so anytime I approach these sessions, which is a lot of teachers with a short amount of time, I like to make these as practical and tangible as possible. If we can have you walk away with a couple new things to go ahead and try tomorrow or next week, then that's a win. We really want this to be something where you can feel comfortable trying something that you saw today. I'd much rather it be about like actual involved experience as opposed to the 30,000-foot philosophy behind why some of these things make sense, which not that that's not important, but I would, again, much rather have you be able to try some of these things and go into your classes and work with your students. So we are going to go ahead and jump in. There are a few primary components of effective feedback that we want to make sure we get into. Now, all of you have been teaching, you all know what feedback is, and you also know what makes feedback successful and effective. And so these 5 components about specificity, always keeping your goal in mind, having information be carefully presented to your students, it being quick and on the spot, and then your learners being involved. If we can check each one of these boxes during the process of providing feedback, we are in really, really good shape. However, with that said, we also know that it's really, really tough to do all of these things on a daily basis. You have a million things to worry about. In some cases, you have 30 students. In some cases, you have 130. And regardless of where you fit,
I'm worried.
whether it's lower elementary or whether it is upper high school, it's tough. And it's mostly because the time that you have available does not generally lend itself to being able to customize feedback for each one of your students every single day. Hopefully, this can help us with Screencastify being the vehicle that makes this process a little bit easier.
This meeting is being recorded.
So,
Hi,
first,
Sean. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
no
JCPS, can you please make sure you're muted when you join in? We're having a hard time hearing him. Some of you are coming in unmuted. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. And I am trying to make you a co-host as we speak. Just bear with me for 1 second. Okay, we'll come back to that in 1 second because I want to make sure we keep going. All right, so with that in mind, the first about being specific is that when you're using Screencastify, we have some folks on the call per your emoji reaction where you feel really, really good about it. You've made videos, you've made dozens of videos. So we want you to know that there are some certain real intricate components within the actual toolbar that are going to make that process even more effective. Where maybe the folks that are not quite as familiar with Screencastify may not even know what that image is that you're looking at on your screen right now. And so as we go through the next now 55 minutes or so, I'm going to jump back and forth through the presentation and then the actual practical showing you of what that looks like. So Screencastify is 3 primary tools: a recorder, a web-based editor, and a video submission tool. What you're looking at now in this box is our annotation toolbar that automatically appears when you create a video recording. Within that toolbar, there are multiple options that you can customize to increase your specificity when you are providing feedback to students. And so let's show what that looks like now. So if I was on a slide presentation and I wanted, say, students shared with me a slide presentation and I was going to give them feedback on their slides. I'm just going to come up here, which many of you know, this is the Screencastify icon. If yours is not pinned, I do know that this has been force installed on all of your devices, so you should have it visible, but if not, just click on the puzzle piece and then you will see it down here. You can select and unselect those pins in order for it to appear up here on your toolbar. But if I wanted to start a recording, I would just click on my extension, and this is going to provide me with customizable options that allow me to determine what type of recording I want to make. Do I want my entire desktop to be recorded? Spoiler alert, when you're providing feedback to students, you are almost always going to want your whole desktop to be recorded. If you are ever giving them just verbal feedback, like some type of message, there are times when just your webcam may be appropriate, and your browser tab is almost exclusively going to be used for non-feedback purposes, mostly when you want to extract audio from a video that is being played on a web page. So if you wanted to record a YouTube video and have the sound and audio also be extracted, you would be using the browser tab and then making sure that your tab audio is there. So when I click on browser tab and I go down here, if I ever wanted to record a YouTube video, I would just make sure my tab audio is selected. But for our feedback example, we're going to select desktop, and I have my drawing tools that are enabled. And when I click record, at this point now, you see down in my bottom left-hand corner that I have different choices. I have a pen, a rectangle, stickers, an eraser. I can stop and start my webcam while the recording is going on. So if I am providing feedback to a student, I am going to want my webcam almost always to be there, as you know that relationship and when they can actually see you giving the feedback is going to be a lot more powerful and effective, along with you being able to just kind of narrate over increases the specificity. But if you want to actually annotate something, you can use our pen tool to underline. You can use this to circle. If you were choosing to help your students with a click pattern, or you wanted to highlight specific components, you might select the focus mouths, saying, I think this is a really good component of your presentation. Good job. You come back, you click on classic, or if you wanted to celebrate something that they did because you thought it was really good, maybe you throw some fireworks in there. Additionally, if you wanted to go back, the rectangle option is a very clean and clear way to isolate certain components of student work that is either shared with you and or just from an instructional video standpoint that you want to highlight as you're going through and working on that. Now you saw me click stop. That's because now my video is finished that I then made for my student. But we're going to jump back here and we'll come back to that in a second. The second component is that we want to give feedback with our goal in mind. If we have a rubric or some type of directions that we are going to use our students to work off of, that would be something when I mentioned going through with your desktop, that you would have that open. So if this was a direction-based assignment that my students were completing, I would actually be navigating from one tab to another while I was giving them feedback. So this is always going to be the kind of anchor that we come back to. Many of you use rubrics. You have different ways and processes through which you actually evaluate and or give feedback to your students. Constantly showing them is what you want to be able to come back to back and forth. And so that's where, whether it is directions or that rubric, you, by recording your whole desktop, will be able to jump back and forth to different things so that you can constantly bring their attention back to that rubric component so that they can understand where you're providing that feedback. The third is that we want this information to be presented carefully. When we are sharing feedback, using the pause button to temporarily stop a recording, the editor to cut out unwanted portions, and or the blur tool, these are all very simple and effective ways in which we can make that information presentation a lot more careful. And this is also true when you're making instructional videos. If anybody on the call has made a video at some point, maybe there has been an interruption, your dog starts barking, or if you're like me, my 6 or 8-year-old will run in the room when I'm 4 minutes into a recording. If you're ever in that scenario, do not stop recording and don't start over. Just keep going. When you are doing that, I encourage you to be able to
Sean, you muted yourself.
Thank you. I sure did. If you do some type of visual clue to yourself when you are having those distractions, you then can jump into the editor and instantly take those out without having to then restart your video. So each of these are really effective ways for you to be able to kind of increase how careful you are presenting information to your students. So we always know that our words and the way that we give students information is important. Well, that is still true for videos. The benefit of Screencastify is that you can manipulate and control that a lot more quickly and easily, as opposed to on the spot with your verbal feedback. For the blur tool and the editor, some of you have used our editor before, but this was the video that we all just made together. If you ever wanted to increase that careful component, all you're going to do is click on Open Editor. And this is going to pre-deposit my video that I just made right away in the bottom toolbar. Now, I mentioned in those distraction moments where you're 3 minutes into a video and then your dog starts barking, if you were to do something like this, that's what allows you to go through and find that if you just scroll across. So say I finish my video and then I don't remember where that was. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to move my cursor down. And at some point, I'm going to see in my webcam right here, me waving at myself. I'm then going to select right in that spot and I'm going to cut. I'm going to then find the next spot when I waved. I'm going to cut again. And now you'll notice that the middle piece is highlighted in yellow. I made 2 cuts on the front and back because, again, that's when I gave myself that visual clue for my dog barking. And then I'm just going to delete it. And then because when that was finished, I would have just kept talking like I did before. And then I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to click. You might select the focus mouths, saying, I think this is a really good component of your go back. And you can barely tell that there was an interruption in that video. And if I did it intentionally and you actually restarted your sentence, you would barely be able to notice that there was even a flicker of the screen. And so your student is still going to get that authentic feedback while you're providing that with them. Second, there was a blur note, and some of you may have used our blur tool before, which is amazing. Others, you may not have ever even heard of it, and that's totally okay. But when we are providing feedback to students, our blur tool can be extremely effective. And that is this little blur button right here. Couple ways in which this is instantly applicable to student feedback is if you want to use another student's example and you want to blur their like handwritten name out, or if you are, feedback aside, if you have some type of recording with a student face and they're on the do not photo list, if you want to put the blur over their face, if you share IEPs and you want to make sure any type of information is then blurred and kept private, sharing your grade book. There are countless ways in which blocking something on your screen is going to be needed. And so when I want to do that, you'll see this first clip is highlighted in yellow, and I'm going to want to blur my face because I'm a student who's on the do not photo list. So I will select the blur button. And now I have this pre-deposited box in the middle of my screen. I'm going to bring that over my face. I'm going to size it correctly. And then I'm going to go to intensity and I'll jack that all the way up to high. There is a 0% chance anyone's going to know that it's me by seeing it with that intensity being high. Imagine this was your grade book and you just had your student names all the way on the left. Same deal. Pull that over to the left-hand side, blur the entire roster out, and then you can use that for feedback, whether that's for discussion-based. If you wanted to actually highlight or isolate just a single student, you can have multiple blurs. Like it's a very, very helpful tool And then when you want to do multiple, you would just actually change it and you pull the side so that it changes how far of the video that blur is actually being implemented, and you have total control over where that blur tool is. So this is helpful for feedback, but it's also helpful for when you make instructional videos. You also may have noticed, I sometimes don't do it, but I always try. Like as teachers, you are all thinking about a million things a minute at the same time. And you're so used to naturally and casually being able to go from one thing to another. When you're teaching with video, I have tried to model, if you notice when my page is loading, I actually try to stop talking. And so like when we exit out, as teachers, you already know where you're going and you want to be on the next thing. But when our page is loading, if we start talking before the page is loaded, our students are missing a step. And so when you are going from like a piece of software to a piece of software, or if you have to try something, do your best to, when you're in the in-between from page to page or software to software, just stop talking until it fully loads and then start your next segment, because your students are going to be able to follow along more effectively with that being the kind of, see, I just did it again. In that moment, I should have stopped so that it loaded. And that's kind of what I meant. All right, so let's give it a try. If we had a third grade student that has written a thesis statement and only partially meets our requirements, Jeffrey has submitted, zoos should not exist. And if I was his LA or ELA teacher, I would want to somehow give him customizable feedback based on his thesis statement. Now, this is not the right link, but you'll get the idea. And so if I had a rubric, I would open up this rubric and then I would go back over, and we're just going to use this for example's sake. This is going to be Jeffrey's work here. And this is his assignment. This is the rubric. Done the wrong thing, sorry. So now I'm looking at Jeffrey's work, and Jeffrey, I'm going to be providing you feedback on your thesis statement. Jeffrey, if you remember, this is the assignment that you were working on. You were supposed to do X, Y, and Z. As you can see, here was the first thing you were supposed to do. Here was the second thing you were supposed to do. Here was the third. This was the most important part of our assignment that we really wanted you to focus on as you were completing your thesis. Don't forget that of all the most important things, this was the most thing we wanted you to extract from writing your thesis. So Jeffrey, when you submitted your work, you said zoos should not exist. But if that was really good, you blah, and then so on. And so when we're doing this, Jeffrey now is going to be able to see, if I wanted to highlight that a thesis is actually, and then I had the definition on the rubric, I would jump back to that. I would highlight the definition. I could go back and I could say, Jeffrey, when you did it, everything was good, but this part, I just really didn't understand what you meant when you contributed or when you wrote that thesis to me. And then you can give as much as you want. And Jenny, I'm trying to keep track, but Jenny, your comment just now about the colors is right on. Some teachers, especially some of you, you may do things that are color coded. Like you have certain vocabulary words that are yellow, or certain things are orange, or certain things are blue. This is certainly something that you could continue with when you are giving feedback via video. If it was like when they make a spelling error, that's blue, or like spelling is blue, but they spelled this word wrong. You would grab blue and then you would go through and you would circle that spelling error. But if they made a punctuation mistake, maybe that's where you bring in green, whatever it might be. But yeah, the color coordination can be really helpful, especially if it's something that you're already doing, because that transcends really easily from one thing to another when these students are then looking at these feedback videos. So then I'm going to stop. And another note here, which is important, and I'm getting a bit out of order, but that's not a problem. Whenever you make a video, this is another pro tip that is both important for feedback and non-feedback. Titling your videos for Jeffrey draft 9/11/23, having some type of consistent process that you are naming your videos the same is going to be so helpful long term, both for finding them, for reusing them, and then for just not going crazy. You'll notice that when you go to your video library, which is here, I've worked at Screencastify for a long time, so I've made hundreds and hundreds of videos. When I search mine, and so some of you may not know, this is your video library. We do have searchable functions where you can type in keywords. You can sort by newest, oldest, A to Z, and Z to A. If I type in untitled, which is the default, if you make a video, it goes untitled with the date. You'll see that I have way too many untitled videos. If I'm in the classroom, these are all completely useless. I can't find anything here. I'm going to have to spend so much time and go through looking for like the thumbnail of what I'm trying to find. Try to get in the habit of right when your video is done, name it something that is consistent and organized that you can go through and then find them. And students' first and last name is good. If you're a person that does this regularly, I taught US history. So maybe I did like the US history, the Gilded Age, the date, and the period. And then I know that any of those things I can actually type into my search bar and it's going to pull up all of those options. But the student feedback piece, you definitely want to make sure that you put their name in there because as you get videos, it's going to be very difficult to find those. The additional piece to the sharing is that when you title that and then say you make your title, when you click copy the share link, that's going to create a hyperlink of the video that you just made. This was Jeffrey's work that he submitted to me. Right when I copy that, I'm going to go through and if I highlight his name, this is not an edit access, but what I would do is I would highlight Jeffrey's name. I would insert a comment and then I would instantly paste that video. So he had the link in his name right at the top of his Google Doc. And so just for example's sake, I'll show you what I mean is that if this was Jeffrey's work and this is what he had submitted to me, I would actually highlight his name and then I would insert a comment and I would paste that video link in a comment here. So when Jeffrey goes back and sees this, he's going to see that his name has the comment of the feedback video that I just made for him. So Jeffrey pulls up his Google Doc. He then sees, I changed my profile, but then Jeffrey would go through and he would then instantly be able to access that video feedback that I just made him. Okay. Yeah, you absolutely can, Karen. You definitely can paste it there. Is that when you're working through, because we have the Google Classroom integration, again, a little out of order, but I think at this point, your questions I've always felt like are more important. When I go to submit, some of you may use submit. We'll talk about it in a little bit if you have not. But to your question, Karen, about the private comments or private feedback. So like if a student, now this could go one of two ways. Like this is a submit dashboard of work that has been submitted to me with our submit tool. But to your question, this is Enrica's assignment that she sent to me via video. I pull it up in Google Classroom. I can watch it here. I can return it. I can give her a grade. I can give private comments. And so I can copy and paste that video link to the feedback video right there. I can paste it. And then when I can refer all of my students back to it, while I am also retaining the original feedback video that I can then share both with the student, with their parent, in a variety of ways, because it is always something that is now hyperlink based. It's really easy to share. Yeah, I agree, Jenny. If you don't make it right there and very visible, it's not going to be looked at. Like if they have to take more than a couple steps to go find it, it's very minimal. The joke I make is I taught AP US history for years and I would spend a long time on every essay and DBQ that they would write, and it would all be handwritten feedback on the essays. And I would give it to them like so hopeful that they would read it. and they probably didn't. But like, if I had some way of doing it via video, would I have increased my chance for them to be able to read it or view it? And I think that they would have. So that's definitely something that we want to make sure that we are doing. All right. For some reason, my share jumped off, but that's okay. All right. So jumping back to the presentation, when we are utilizing our editor, we want feedback in terms of the specificity. We talked about the blur option. You can also add text with the editor, and that is another option when you are looking at, I get kind of tab crazy if you couldn't tell. So we're going to click out a few of these. In the editor, when we are thinking about the more specific feedback, some of you also know that we can add title slides. So if you were making a video, whether it's for feedback or whether it's for an instructional video, you can select add title slide and add media. And you can put Jeffrey feedback on this slide so that he knows what is about to come. But you can also add text within the actual slides. And so these are all able to be modified both by color, by fill. You can add additional text boxes. And then this is going to help you when you are editing that feedback if you really wanted to take it to the next level. But just as like a call out, I mean, the editor is very, very easy and simple to use. You saw the cuts and the blurs don't take very long. The editor has options to be very quick, very smooth, very easy. But if you wanted to, you can also level it up and make it like this, where you're adding text and adding title slides and doing a lot of other things. But it's really about the choice and intentionality that you have. You certainly don't have to. But if you, because it's not, is it realistic for you to do this for every student every day 30 times? Well, no, like it's not, but you really shouldn't be doing it every single day for 30 students. So thinking about the way in which that goal comes up and what you want to accomplish is what we would encourage you to do. I want to be mindful of time. We're about halfway through. So the title clip that I just showed is helpful both for feedback, but it's also for a timer that students can use. And so this is true both for our blur tool, but it's also true for the title slide. So if you are using video as a teaching tool or for a feedback tool, and I make this title slide come in the middle, and then I extend it here. And so a good component of, I see that this is now at 56 seconds. So the first 56 seconds was of me doing something. And so I'm right at about 1 minute. If you can see, like now this is 1 minute and 56 seconds. So this black box is equal to 1 minute. So if you think about yourself, whenever you use a video in class, have you ever said, pause the video, or you have had to pause the video, or you wish you could just build in work time and not having to go to 1 or 2 or 3 video links during the course of a lesson? Well, this alleviates that problem. You can make this title slide as long as you want to. You could make it 5 minutes long if you wanted the students to do something with a partner for 3 minutes, and then you could have them come back. And what you put actually on the slides themselves are for you. I mean, you could have them do anything. You could have them stand up and take a break during the course of a video if you wanted to. And yeah, you could certainly put directions on there. As we mentioned here, if you wanted them to go get materials or practice something or get up and go to a place in the class or think about a different response, these are all built-in feedback mechanisms that you can have while you're utilizing those title slides. Another item with feedback is that if students completed something in class, and then you had a video that was eventually going to get them to the answer. My wife is a second grade teacher, and she uses the blur functionality for like reveal activities with her students. So like if there's a picture of something, she might start off, I'll delete these. She might start off with a title slide that poses a question, and then it's like, you need to guess what this picture is. And then when the picture first comes up, she drops the blur tool over the picture. And in her case, she makes it like the entire screen, and she makes it super high, right? And then she'll cut the video here, and then she'll put a title slide in. And then she'll like give them another clue. And so then she'll put the clue here, and then she'll go back to the video, and then she'll make another blur tool. But then when she does it the second time, the intensity is not quite as high. So like maybe you can see a little bit more, and then you do it again. And then you make it so that by the time you're done, it's very low, and the students now can see most of it. So the way in which you're utilizing the editing tools can be for feedback, they can be for teaching, but they can also be for interactive components that are feedback based. Additionally, the sooner the better. We had already kind of talked about this. So we have those share page links that allow you to share the watch page anywhere and everywhere. You can copy and paste it in a presentation, in an email, in your LMS, wherever makes sense, as the bottom point says, for your kids to be able to access this as easily as possible. But the additional kind of layer to why this is really helpful is that we now have analytics for you to be able to see who watched these videos. And so some of you that are Screencastify Pro users, you may already have used this before, but maybe you haven't, and that's totally okay. When I go to any video that I've made before, on the right-hand side, there's a few different options of things that you can add on to your video. Before we do any of these, though, I want to click on the Show Share Settings. Anyone with the link, I'm going to click on that box. And this is where now you as the teacher is going to be able to customize what data you're tracking as people click on that link. So if you're a fourth grade teacher and you make a video to start off class on a Tuesday, and so students come into your classroom, they all sit down, and you want them to spend the first 4 minutes of class watching this 3-minute long video. I'm going to set this as who can access the video, anyone with the link, because I'm sharing it with just my students. How do I want to track analytics? I know that everybody in my classroom is logged into their Google account, so I'm going to want to pick by email address. Now, you can have it stay anonymous, or you can do it by nickname. So I'm going to pick by email again, because if I'm sharing with my students, then they all have Google and they're all logged into Google. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm not sure why the share keeps turning off. My apologies. So I then am also going to save that as my default, because that's going to be what I do 98% of the time. And then I click save. You'll notice that this viewers says 0. If I copy this link, and I'm going to drop this in the chat, if a couple people wouldn't mind, if you could just go ahead and click on that link that I dropped in the chat for me, please. And so in our example, if I'm in my fourth grade classroom and I gave them those 4 minutes, at the end of those 4 minutes, if I have 30 students in my class, I'm going to want that 0 to read 30. So at the end of the 4 minutes, I'm going to refresh that page. Now I've got 8, which is awesome. Thank you to the 8 people that did that. In my classroom example, we're not ready to move on yet, right? Because I know that the other 22 students did not click on this link, so they have not engaged with that video that I wanted them to be engaged with. But for the 8 people that did, thank you. And so I now have access to the student, their email, when and how many times they viewed my video. And so this is helpful both for the in-person example that we just mentioned, but also for feedback, right? Like if a student sends an assignment to you and you spend 10 minutes giving them feedback via video, set your analytics on, send that to the student, and then the next day, go in and see if they watched it. If the student watched it 8 times, that's wonderful. If they watched it 0 times, that's a very different conversation that you're having about their engagement or lack thereof with your feedback. So it's very helpful for a variety of purposes, both with teaching and learning, but also with feedback. And so as you refresh that, you'll notice that number is going to change. Abigail, you read my mind about the how long, not yet. So right now, when you see that number being 21, consider that to be the number of students that have clicked into the video. But we all know students are very smart. They know that after a couple seconds, they know it's going to track as a view, and then maybe they're going to exit out of the video. Now, philosophical arguments, which I said we weren't going to get into aside, is like when all of you have to do your training videos for school, like, are you really watching the bloodborne pathogen video or the workplace safety video? No judgment, but like, you're probably not. Are students watching the videos that you have them watch? Maybe, maybe not. But Kate, you are exactly right. The accountability piece then can be amplified even further from a feedback perspective by these two buttons down here. Of course they do, Kathleen. Every single person watches all of them in their duration, and they are engaged and locked in. But if you wanted to make sure of that, you could do a couple things. Interactive questions and add exit poll. And so when you think about coupling this number of viewers with interactive questions, the amount of active engagement and like active viewership really increases. And I can do that simply by clicking interactive questions. And now this is going to instantly take me, after I have to re-log in, to this page. Some of you may have used this feature before, maybe not, which is totally fine. You can now, per what Kathleen mentioned previously in the chat, you have all, and I should have said this probably at the beginning, every teacher on this call has full access to all the things that we're talking about. You can make unlimited videos, edit unlimited videos, have unlimited submit assignments, and do all the things that I'm sharing here currently with what JCPS has purchased for the teachers in the district. So with that said, when I want to add a question, yes, and yes, absolutely true. Like captions, quiz questions, analytics, these are all newer items. So if you're looking at this like, hey, this wasn't here a couple of years ago, that is true. But hopefully we're kind of reintroducing you to some of these things that are getting you excited about hopefully using them here in the near future. But to the point about accountability, if I wanted to strategically think about what my students were engaging with, if it were me, I generally recommend beginning, middle, and end. Beginning, middle, and end is usually going to be not a ton of time on your end, but it's going to at least encourage your students to be engaged for a duration of the video itself. So if I go 5 seconds in, 7 seconds in, I just click that blue button down there, which was add question. And then I can put add question here. You can make it however long you want. And then this is where you would put your answers in. Now, right now, this is unique to multiple choice and true false answers. So they're quick, formative, like easy to respond to. However, we are very much so right now in the midst of building short answer, long response, customizable feedback, reactions as you watch, along with polls and multiple guesses or multiple responses, I should say, when they are responding to your questions. Or you could do like true, false. And then you're going to select your right answer and you're going to click save. And so now this little gray dot indicates that I have inserted a question in that spot. And then I go somewhere in the middle, second 38, and I'm going to add another question. Then I'm going to put the right answer. Now I got one in the middle, and I'm going to go somewhere toward the end, and I'm going to put in one more, and you get the idea at this point. And then I'm going to click save. And so now I've got 3 questions, beginning, middle, and end. You can put in 20 questions if you wanted to. You could put in 2. When you add questions, if you go to the top right-hand corner, there's a little arrow. When you extract that pane out, you're going to see all of the questions that you inserted that are here, 1, 2, 3, and then however many else that you made. Say I made a mistake and I didn't want my second question to be at second 38. I actually wanted it to be at second 58. No big deal. You're going to click edit. You're going to go to time in video, and you're just going to change that from 38 to 58. And when you click save, you may have caught that instantly pulled my question to that appropriate second marker in the video itself. Now, to the point that was made in the chat before regarding them watching the video, this is then where we kind of are connecting it to the students and them viewing it. So then I'll click, when I'm finished with my questions, I'll click share. Copy watch page link. It's the same button as you do share from your videos. And then we're going to do this part together. Wow. At this point now, just as a note, normally you do not have to re-log in every time. I had to clear my cookies in cache about an hour ago, which was less than ideal timing. When students are watching this, though, you'll see now from their perspective, they're going to see 3 questions that are here at different points. Students can fast forward to questions, but they cannot skip past the question. So if I'm a student and I'm watching this, they cannot just go to the end because they have to respond to those questions. So when I click play, it's going to stop me when it gets to that question. I'm then going to answer it. Whoops, got it wrong. Kate, I'm going to respond to that's a great question. I will respond to that in just a second. When you go to the next one, you're going to respond. Yep, it sure does. Ellie, I hope I pronounced that right. So now I have responded. Whoops, I got all of them wrong. When I go through and I go as the teacher to my responses now. Kathleen's ahead of the game. Thank you, Kathleen. So as the teacher, you can share, you can add questions, you can edit, but then you're also getting instantaneous feedback on the responses that you just sent out. Now, Kathleen did a great job, which highlights the point perfectly. She only answered one of these questions. I answered all 3. As a teacher, what I would recommend you look at is that little blue check mark. And when I hover over, you may see that it says all questions answered. Kathy, it's perfect that you're not finished because it hits home the point ideal, is that when you look at your roster of students, that blue check mark indicates that a student has given all responses. So if I have 30 names, I'm going to want to do a quick glance for the blue check marks. And if everybody has a blue check mark, then I know that they have all clicked into the video and they have all at least given a response to those questions. So that is very much so ideal in a sense of how that works. There's been a lot of information. I totally understand. I'm going to pause in just a moment after I answer Kate's question, and we'll open it up to any other ones. In terms of using it for people on a team, there's a lot of ways to do it. What I think is probably one of the more customizable ways to do it is that if you have your video open in the editor, which is here, and disregard all this stuff that's on here. Say that you have a teaching team of 4 people and you divvy up the work. So someone's doing unit 1, someone's doing unit 2, someone's doing unit 3, someone's doing unit 4. Kate, you make 3 videos for unit 1 that you want to share with your team members. You have 2 main choices when you're doing that. The first is that all your team members just play your video like word for word, which is fine, like because the content is the same and you want it to be similar, but it's maybe not the best choice because they're still going to see you and they're not going to see their teacher, which if they see you next door, again, that's okay. But if you want it to be where you are including more personal components, what I recommend is using the editor with the kind of more global content pieces that you'll then be teaching. So say, Kate, what I would recommend you do is that you have the 3-minute teaching portion that you want everyone to use. You specifically make that, you put it in your editor, and then you're just going to export to Screencastify, and you would say like team example. And then you know that that's the example that the team is all going to pull from. And then when I click save, I am then going to pull that as the MP4, but I'm going to want to get that back into my editor as just that, because what I'm going to couple with that also is I'm going to make a custom intro maybe where I go webcam only And then I'm going to record myself introducing this video that Kate taught, but at least now they're going to see me at the beginning. And then I'm going to match both of those clips in my editor so they see my intro. I'll put a title slide in, and then they'll see Kate teaching whatever that topic is, and then I'll conclude it, and then I'll export it back to my own Screencastify. So that's just one way. There's like a lot of different ways in which you can match and make things compatible. But they're all very helpful. And the last thing I will say on feedback, just kidding, and then I'll open up to questions, I promise, is that Screencastify Submit is an extremely powerful tool. We highly encourage you to take a look at Submit. And if you've never used it, this is a video submission tool where you can have students respond back to you with videos. So like if I say, hey, student, if I'm a counselor at the high school and all the students that I see frequently, I want to do weekly check-ins with, I can say, make a new topic. And in this case, I can put it in my Google Classroom if they're in a Google Classroom, or I can generate a link, which I could send this out to parents. Hey, parent, can you please reflect on how your student is doing? If you are a band teacher or a music teacher, and you want your students to be practicing on video that are then sent back to you, we have a lot of special teachers that use this. But it's very simple. New topic, generate a link. What are you going to have your students do? Screen and webcam only, or screen recording. And then I would go through and I would make the assignment. And then where those are actually sent back to you are in your Google Drive. So you'll see I have a Screencastify folder and I have a Screencastify Submit folder. And these are all of the assignments that at one point or another I have made in Screencastify Submit. The reason why I share this connected to feedback is because if I'm in my editor and I have a student, say I have a student named Nate, and Nate's mom emails me, and Nate's mom is like, how's Nate doing in class? My first reaction is start typing an email. Hey, Miss Jones, like, thanks so much for the note. Nate is doing well. And then here's a bunch of stuff that you're going to write down and how long that takes. I'm not saying don't email people, but like maybe a video is the better option. If I have used Submit a lot in my class, when those student submissions are entered back into me, they are tagged with the student's first and last name. So maybe instead of writing Nate's mom a really long email, maybe I am going to send her a video of Nate's work. And I can do that by going into my editor, clicking Add Media, Drive, and then I'm just going to type in Nate's first name. And because Nate has submitted videos back to me, any video that has Nate's name on it is going to pop up in my Google Drive. And I can then select 3 of these, or however many I want, and I can drop these into my editor.
Hi.
And so from here, so from here, I then would go through and I would just drop a title slide in. Title slide. And now I have a very quickly made mini like portfolio. Thanks, Kathleen. So then I can go through and I can share this with Nate's mom as opposed to writing her this really long email. I would then just export back to Screencastify. And then I can copy the link. I can email it to Nate's mom and say, hey, I'd love for you to see what Nate's doing. Then I also know if she clicks on the link, because then she may have sent me the email, but is she going to actually read my response? And then I can tell if she actually watched the video that I sent her, which was customizable feedback. Cody, yes, there sure is. That was actually a great segue. If there are any questions, we've got about 7 minutes. There is a way to get transcripts. And when you do that, you can go to any video in your video library. And when you open it, you'll see at the bottom right, it says captions. If I click on captions, it's going to offer me the option to auto-generate or upload my own. So depending upon where you sit whether you service students in terms of language needs or like if IEPs are 504, stuff like that, you can do whatever works best. But we do have a generate for you option, which while it's generating, what this is going to do is it's going to provide a timestamp generated transcript of what you have said in English. We are working on the top like 11 most frequently spoken language outside of English in the United States, which will eventually be a drop down where you'll be able to select which language feature. Now that's not there yet, but you will be able to generate English captions. From there, if you need a workaround. At this point now, you see down in my bottom left-hand corner, my voice once is more than enough. But when you open up this video, you now can review and edit your transcript. And so I mentioned that it was timestamped. So if I scroll like down here, you're going to see that if I'm selecting this box, it's going to show me in real time what it looks like when my students are actually watching it. I recommend this, especially like my name is Sean, right? S-H-A-U-N. So my name is sometimes misspelled. If I had Sean's, or as many of you do have different spelling of names in your classroom, if you say a student name, I would always recommend going to the name, because then if you change it, you're going to see how on the screen, when I am changing it, you can then mirror that to be correct. And then it's going to show you exactly on the screen what it is that you're typing. When you're finished, you can just click done. But to the language translation part, say you need this in Spanish, you can click these three dots and you can download the VTT file. And when you download the VTT file, go to Google Translate, you're going to upload your English VTT file, select Spanish, download the Spanish version, and then you're going to come back and you're just going to upload the new VTT file, and then that will instantly replace the English generated transcripts with those timestamps because of the way that the VTT to VTT works within Google Translate. So we covered a lot today, but thank you all. We've got a few minutes left. Are there any other questions that I can help answer if we don't feel like we got enough out of today? If I miss any questions in the chat, I'm so sorry.
No, oh my goodness. I'm trying to keep up, when there's 85 people in the chat, it's hard. So I'm trying to keep up with you. I think you were able to answer most of them.
Okay.
Is it on our Clever? Is what on our Clever? Book Creator, it was just added to our Clever, and there are a lot of great resources. For those who are asking, IT3 Innovation, we put out a magazine every month called Ignite, and I added Screencastify resources there. But anytime you have questions or feedback, or even if you're doing something really cool, I would love personally for you to share that with me. Our team has changed a little bit, so we don't have the 10 resource teachers any longer. I work solely with the district administrators, but I'm a teacher at heart, and I'm really passionate about instructional technology. So anything you're doing that's really cool in the classroom with Screencastify, please let me know. And Sean will be here every month. So I feel like I have a principal calling me right now, actually. So sorry. Any questions you have, Sean will be here once a month through the school year to give different professional learning opportunities to you. So thank you so much for your engagement. I just texted my boss and was like, oh my goodness, there are so many brilliant teachers here with us tonight. And I'm excited for your excitement. And if there's anything that IT3 can do, please let us know. I'm trying to look. Oh, yes, Austin, do not use another program. JCPS pays for Screencastify for you, for all teachers. Our superintendent, Dr. Polio, uses this every week. He records himself and sends a message to all principals. So you really need to use Screencastify. For those of you who are in Modern Classroom Project, if you're familiar with that, I know they advertise another program for free, but we've paid for this for several years now. So I would use this because it will continue to be free for you. And we're working on the student portion, but I put a link in the chat to our YouTube channel with a alternative for now. Are we going to be able to get this recording? Yes, Kelly, thank you for asking. So I will put this on our YouTube channel, jcps.me/digital learning. Sean's going to get that recording to me, and I'll make sure it's on Twitter as well. Thank you, Brenda, for spreading the word. Do we need to fill out anything for attendance? Justin, no. So Sean is so amazing that he's going to send me the attendance as well. So as long as your name is right on there, we will get your attendance. I'm trying to look, Sean, as quickly as I can. Kamala. Oh, what a beautiful name. I'm not sure I said that correctly, but I'm so glad you attended. I'm glad you got something out of it.
It's Kamala, actually.
Kamala. I'm sorry, say it again.
Kamala.
Kamala. Oh, that's gorgeous.
I guess it's not spelled the way it should sound.
That's why I always ask. It's very important that I pronounce it correctly. Kathleen, I thought was pretty easy to pronounce, but evidently it's not. So any name that begins with a K is perfect in my book. Okay, where would we be able to access this recorded video? Morgan asked where we can access it. I put it in the chat earlier, but I'll put it again. So jcps.me/digital learning is our YouTube channel. There are other Screencastify sessions there as well. So that'll be there too. But I understand Sean's amazing and we want to make sure we get this one. So I will get that from him and edit out a few parts and get the important stuff on there. Amber, 5 o'clock. It would not let me log in. Amber, if you just email me and let me know, because my secretary takes care of this. So as long as you email me and let me know, she's a stickler. So email me and tell me Amber was here. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Sean, thank you so much. I even learned several things and I feel like I'm like an expert, but I'm not. So thank you.
I'm so glad. And I really, really appreciate everyone's time. I look forward to seeing y'all next month.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right. Good night. Thanks, everyone.